So it's been kind of crazy watching the media cover what Israel is doing in Gaza. So early on, I thought print media is doing a pretty solid job, with some exceptions. And of course, in Western outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post, sometimes they really overly sanitize crimes committed by Israel. They'll describe like Hamas attacks in brutal, stark terms, as they should. But when it's like Israel killing Palestinian civilians, all of a sudden the language is very passive. But by and large, the media, print media, has done a good job uncovering a lot of facts when it comes to Gaza being absolutely obliterated. Now, TV has been different. So Western outlets have largely sucked, I would say. You really only get one main perspective that undergirds all of the coverage in the West. But every now and then you'll have, one solid moment where the humanity breaks through, like Wolf Blitzer being shocked after a refugee camp was attacked and over 100 Palestinian civilians were killed, and he had on an Israeli official, and he was like, wait, you did all this to literally get one Hamas guy? He was stunned. He couldn't believe it. But that's what happened. And Jake Tapper early on has had some good moments. But look, there hasn't been a good moment in at least 2 or 3 weeks. Like, it's been... If you watch the coverage on this show in all of our big breaking segments where we go through all the updates in Gaza, ours is way more substance-packed than anything you see on CNN or MSNBC, certainly on Fox News, but even on the nightly news, etc. Like, they're just not doing a great job. But here we have a really interesting situation because you have somebody who works for CNN just had 9 of their family members killed by Israel. Let me repeat that. 9 of their family members killed by Israel. So that sort of shook a lot of the hosts out of their complacency. And so now we're going to get an interesting moment. Jake Tapper is going to confront an Israeli official about what happened to this CNN worker's family. Let's watch.
And it makes our job just so much more difficult. But I think, and I've seen the numbers, and I can't share with you yet, but when this is over, we can have a serious discussion when the fog of war is behind us. But I am convinced, though every single civilian death, and especially children, is a tragedy, and we don't want to see it, in comparative numbers, if you compare Israel to perfection, of course we'll fall short. But if you compare Israel to other Western armies who've been fighting terrorists in built-up urban areas, I think Israel will not come out badly in the comparison. On the contrary.
That is the least true thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm sorry, but what Israel is doing in Gaza in such a short time frame makes the U.S. military look like Noam Chomsky. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. They make the U.S. look positively humanitarian in comparison to what they're doing in Gaza.
We're seeing that the IDF really has done everything that is humanly possible to try to safeguard innocent civilians.
It's very hard to believe that, especially on a day when one of our producers lost 9 members of his family who are not members of Hamas, not members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not members of any group, just 9 people just trying to live their lives.
I want you to take note. Keep looking at Jake Tapper's face throughout this whole segment, because it really gives away how he actually feels about what this scumbag is saying. Look at his face here.
First of all, I extend my sorrow to him and my sympathies. But if I saw your report correctly, and please correct me if I say something wrong, that happened in northern Gaza, in Gaza City, where a month ago we already asked all the civilians to leave. And most of them did. If there was like 1,200,000 people there was only a couple of tens of thousands left. And one has to ask, yes, they had ample opportunity to leave. I don't know what happened. I don't have the specific circumstances. I know there's deadly combat going on now in the north, still between these IDF and Hamas terrorists, yes? And we don't want to see anyone caught up in the crossfire, but why didn't they heed the advice and leave the area?
Victim blaming. Victim blaming 101. Look, we told you we were going to do a trail of tears and march you to the other side of Gaza, where, by the way, we will continue to bomb you and then eventually invade you. But we told you you could add a couple more weeks to your life if you just did the Trail of Tears and left your home. But for those of you who didn't, well, what do you want me to say? We consider all... And by the way, he says, look, they almost all got out. There's only a couple tens of thousands left there. A couple tens of thousands? He says that as if it's like, well, we warned them, so now if we kill those tens of thousands of people, they had it coming. Oh my God, this is so wrong.
I know there's deadly combat going on now in the north, still between these IDF and Hamas terrorists, yes? And we don't want to see anyone caught up in the crossfire, but why didn't they heed the advice and leave the area?
You can't blame them. There's now
I don't blame them.
But you can't. There's fighting in the South now. I mean, I've been asking this since October 7th. Where are these people supposed to go?
CNN host. Even the CNN host sees right through it and is like, what are you talking about? Where are they supposed to go? By the way, guys, again, one simple fact destroys the notion that we're only targeting Hamas. If you're only targeting Hamas, then why at the very beginning of this conflict did you say, we're going to do a total siege of all of Gaza? No food, no fuel, no water, no electricity, etc. That's 2.3 million people who you're cutting those things off for. Are they all Hamas? Are they all bad people? Now, in moments of honesty, you have had Israeli officials say, well, we think there are no civilians in Gaza. They're guilty enough. Okay. Well, now those people are being more straightforward. But the others who are trying to have it both ways and say, no, I mean, they got caught in the crossfire. We're targeting Hamas. No, they didn't get caught in the crossfire. They got caught in the fire. They were the purposefully hit. That's how you get to a situation where you have over 90% innocent civilians killed. When Israel, for example, bombs a standalone UN building, they were trying to bomb the UN building. There was nothing else even around it. Is it their contention that Hamas was under the UN building? They might say that, but they don't actually believe that. And by the way, there was the Plus 972 report that came out the other day that we talked about in detail, where we have verification now. It is the strategy to terrorize the civilian population and then hope that that'll make the civilian population turn on Hamas. Well, quite the contrary. I think it's more likely than not that you're creating more Hamas members.
So at the beginning, it was easier because the fighting was concentrated in the north, and we just asked people to move south, and that was relatively simple. Yes, I'm not saying totally simple, but relatively simple. Just go south of the river. But now we're being more specific because it is more complicated in the south. We've actually designated areas in the south which are safer areas, which are especially there's a number of them. We've shared.
Look at Tapper's face. Look at his reaction. You heard that breath. Again, I just watch his face the whole time. Listen to whoever's talking, but watch his face.
Now we're being more specific because it is more complicated in the south. We've actually designated areas in the south which are safer areas, which are especially there's a number of them. We've shared the maps with the United States. It's been shared also with the UN and the other humanitarian organizations. Listen, we have to hit Hamas in Khan Yunis. They've got a strong military infrastructure there. They've got a network of tunnels.
So in other words, when he just said, why didn't they go south? Now he's saying, by the way, we're also going to bomb south and invade south. So then when you told these civilians to go south and you would have been fine, that was a lie. That was a lie is what it was.
We want to destroy Hamas's military machine, and we have to act in the south as well. Senior Hamas commanders are there under the ground in Khan Yunis. We can't not go.
Oh, interesting. They're under the ground. They're in the tunnels. So why are you bombing the residential buildings? Why are you bombing the civilian infrastructure?
But in going there and to defeat Hamas, we're also going to make a major effort once again to try to safeguard civilian lives. And that's why we're urging people there now to move to the new areas that we've specified. And as the operation ground...
Look at Tapper's face.
...starts, I can assure you that the escape routes, the humanitarian corridors that will allow civilians to get out of harm's way will still be there.
Those were bombed too, by the way. When the initial announcement came, hey, go from the north to the south, a bunch of people did it. But on the way there were a bunch of bombs and a bunch of people died.
Brega, thank you so much.
Oh, Tapper. Look at Tapper. Look at his face. He is not buying it even in the slightest. So look, credit to Jake Tapper. Early on in the conflict, he showed some concern for Palestinian civilians and did some good, tough lines of questioning. Since then, he hasn't really done much. I don't think his coverage has been all that good, but this is a solid moment here where it's written all over his face. You could tell by his line of questioning. He thinks this is complete and utter horseshit. And he's correct. By the way, just to back it up. So now, remember, guys, a CNN a producer, 9 of their family members are now dead because of Israel's bombing. So now it's hitting home for CNN. And but the thing that drives me a little crazy, if I'm being honest, is look at this. There's been a total of 76 journalists killed in this Israeli assault on Gaza. By the way, I wonder what the total number of journalists is in Gaza. I wonder, what is it, like 200 or so? Is it nearly half of the journalists have been killed? There are specific stories laid out in detail from other outlets, I think Al Jazeera is one of them, of the family members of journalists in Gaza being targeted, being killed. They have video of this stuff. Video of a journalist carrying his dead child and crying. So, look, journalists are being targeted. They're being targeted, and they've been for virtually the entire time. But now, CNN, when it impacts one of their producers' family members, now they're like, oh, it turns out Israel is purposely killing innocent people, including journalists. Yeah, you mean the thing that we've all been telling you every step of the way has been going on? Now that it affects you, you wake up to it? Look, I don't want to be too harsh because I'm happy at the tone of this interview, but you guys got to keep it up. You guys got to keep it up. Keep the outrage up. Keep the focus on the facts and the numbers. 21,000 dead and 19,660 are civilians. Over 8,000 children dead, over 4,000 women dead. 1.78 million people displaced. 22 hospitals bombed. Like, in other words, it's like it feels too little too late, right? It feels too little too late from CNN. Again, I'm happy at this reaction, but also, final point, look how easy it is to poke holes in the bogus narrative of the Israeli officials. I mean, they sound like total blithering idiots. Why? Because they're doing the indefensible, and then they try to defend it. And they look like clowns, because they are clowns. But in this instance, genocidal clowns, so it's not that funny. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.